also be sort of addressing a challenge of sometimes not having the number of teachers with the trained skills.
Absolutely.
Is that a problem to get the teachers with the skills?
It is a major issue. It's one of SLATE's great challenges because it's getting fantastic infrastructure, both hard and soft infrastructure, as I said. It's getting the training, it's getting all these things which are one-offs, large amounts of money, but one-offs, because that's the way development assistance works. But the operating annual budget as a government institution, it will come from the national budget. And as you know, government salaries are very limited. Any changes to these salaries on the basis of engineers being top professionals, it's very hard to achieve. And in some disciplines, the salaries might be okay, but in high demand, high paid professions like engineering, there's a real issue about having the capacity with the right amount of salaries to attract good people to stay. So we had, I think SLATE senior management looking at all kinds of clever ways to overcome those issues now.
So what you're saying is it happens because when SLATE as an institution is developing their capacity with infrastructure and so on, the national budget will not be sufficient to keep on paying good salaries, and that is a challenge that they have to face.
It's an issue for all government educational institutions. It's an equally big issue for the universities. When I was last here, I was helping to develop a funding model for how to allocate funds from the national, through the University Grants Commission to the universities. And the big issue was the national budget at that time, given the demands of the civil war. You know, so budget was always under stress in this country, as you know, in the last 20 years.
So now that the war is over, these are the areas to which actually the budget should be diverted. And here I think we are not even talking about the universities, but more studies at the technical level and vocational level when we talk about institutes like the Sri Lanka Institute of Advanced Technology, where actually teacher training has to happen if they are to make the best use of the capacity that is available to them.
Absolutely, because it would be a shame if all this fantastic infrastructure, both the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure is there, and the senior management is trying so hard to recruit staff even right now. I mean, during the election period, they were not allowed to recruit staff because you can't have government processes. They are frozen. But then they've been released and they're now trying to recruit staff. And we'll see if they can manage to get good staff and move this whole thing forward.
And Satis, we went into detail about this area of construction because it's a crucial area.
Yes.
Where it needs skills.
Yes.
But what are the other areas which need skills this way other than construction?
I would say that skills are needed across the board in Sri Lanka in almost every area. So we couldn't talk about all of those tonight, but let me just mention a few. I mean, some of my colleagues have been working on food and agriculture. It's a massive industry area. Probably larger than the construction industry in terms of the share of the national GDP, because it's huge. Food processing, agriculture, aquaculture, horticulture, and so on. And then another wonderful opportunity is IT and telecommunications, and these are some things we've been also looking at. And the IT industry is poised for fantastic takeoff because it's very high quality. Our graduates and our diplomats are high quality, as I understand it, and they are competitive because local salaries are competitive, and because you can do the work that is required in the first world from here, and you can actually deliver the software electronically to those countries. So we have the competitive advantage of high quality young people with Sri Lankan salaries which are very competitive. So those are some of the areas where we could be working in that. And so if you're talking about IT and so on, there are some very good models of economic growth that we could be looking at in order to go forward. And I've always admired Singapore for what it managed to achieve since Singapore was established around 1965. It's amazing that one of the great things that it emphasized was skills. So skills was the lead indicator of Singapore's economic growth and success.
Right. So, Satis, now that we spoke about construction and we touched upon other areas, I think each area needs a separate discussion by itself.
Indeed.
So now I think it's a crucial point you touched on, because you spoke about Singapore, and that Singapore did something right, and that was enhancing the skills of their population. So how can we take the lessons from Singapore, and what did Singapore do right actually to get the workforce full of skills?
Well, it recognized that if you had a fantastically skilled workforce, and this is way back in the 1970s when Singapore was still, not the first world country it is today, but its leaders recognized that if we upskill the people, it would, and created a friendly, reliable workforce that's also skilled, disciplined, friendly, reliable, and skilled, then it would be a magnet for the world's best companies. They would all want to come there, and the salaries were probably lower than they are today in 1970s, in real terms. And so that was the strategy. Get the skills lifted, make it possible for foreign large companies to come and do business in Singapore, give them flexible tax arrangements, good accommodation for their people, good infrastructure, telecommunication, ports, roads, shopping. And you have the world's top companies, finance companies, high-tech companies coming to Singapore. But skills was the underlying major factor. So it was the skills. I mean, the staggering things Singapore did with skills. Like its research scientists and engineers for every 10,000 people of the workforce. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was about 6. It's now 80 or something of that order. In 30 or 45 years, they've gone from 6 to about 80. And that's a top world leading figure now.
So that is the lead indicator is skills, and
Yes.
once you upgrade the skills,
Correct.
it's sort of a
Yes.
snowballing effect where
Exactly.
everything falls into place.
Exactly. So that's one model.
And the other thing that you referred in the early of the interview, I wanted to ask at that time, was you referred to the fact that there's sort of a brain drain, and skilled people have also left the country in the past years. Now, how can we actually bring these, the diaspora, so to say, or the Sri Lankan community living abroad, how can we actually bring those people, because they are also educated abroad and they have sufficient skills, how can we encourage them to come back to Sri Lanka? And can we also learn from countries that have done that? Maybe, I don't know, whether it's Singapore or any other country who's actually got their communities who migrated abroad to come back to their countries.
Very good question. Let me just think about Taiwan. Taiwan was one of those great examples where 30 years ago they started a science park called the Hsinchu Science Park, and the Taiwanese government gave the right incentives for Taiwanese people, professionals living in abroad, living in the United States, for example, to come back and bring their knowledge and technology and establish a startup high technology company in the Hsinchu Science Park. This science park has had government investment of about $2 billion over the last 30 years. That's a big number, but what they got was an annual export of $35 billion of high technology exported now out of Hsinchu Science Park alone. It's the second Silicon Valley of the world, and they have fantastic links to Silicon Valley as well. So this was possible by the right mix of government incentives and attitudes to bring the top Taiwanese technologies back to Taiwan and create this miracle of a fantastic economic success of the Hsinchu Science Park. And there are other science parks in Taiwan now as well. So I think appealing to the patriotism of expat Sri Lankans is a great thing to do by politicians, but it's not enough. I think we need more than just appealing to patriotism.
We need win-win situations.
We need win-win situations. We need to explain to them why it is worthwhile to come back. Now, having said that, I'm amazed at some of the IT companies that are now operating in Sri Lanka.
So we will talk about IT companies after taking a small break.
You.
Stay with us.